Hey cats, today I'm talking failed shoe tech. Eddbud here and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to delve into the bizarre and the strange. Going to look at some shoe designs and some models that simply never took off, they just failed. Maybe they were a bit too ahead of their time. Perhaps a little bit too quirky for some people. That has been said about me. Here's some of the worst shoe designs ever. Thanks for tuning in, peeps. Something a little bit different for you today, just to cleanse the palate. If you're new to the channel, help us out. We're almost at 35k subs. Hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up like, that helps a huge amount. And share it with your running buddies. Oh yeah. So looking at some failed shoe designs here, some technologies that just didn't take off. And I think you'll probably see why some of them are really weird. First up is the frankly bizarre Nike Avidian. Well, the strange thing about this cross-training shoe is that you could turn it inside out, you know, because that's what we all want from our shoes, isn't it? Yep, you can completely reverse the shoe and change its colour and design. Cool, huh? Well, apparently the public weren't simply too enamoured with this one and it just didn't take off. I think the problem with the Avidian was that it took about 5 minutes to change each shoe from one colour to the other. One side had a leather and suede upper with a waffle outsole, and the other a canvas mesh with a zigzag outsole pattern. And you got this inner booty section that you had to sort of remove to sort of do anything to switch them. Then of course you've got to take out the laces, kind of flip the shoe around, put the booty back in and relace. So you're talking about 10 minutes. It's probably not something that you want to do, you know, when you're down the pub just to show your mates how cool it is. I think these are quite rare now by all accounts. There's a few pairs knocking around on eBay and some Japanese sort of auction sites. I think in the year 2000 they're about $85. That would translate to about $147 in today's money. I'm not even sure now that we're ready for a shoe such as this. Oh, hang on though. There was that Jordan System 23, wasn't there, that released last year? It's not all that different, is it? Do you remember this next one, people? I covered this shoe in a very early video on the channel when I was still working things out. I did suggest that this model would be a flop, the Nike Joyride. Back in 2019, Nike reckoned on this shoe being more cushioned than the Pegasus 36 or the Epic React. That's some big words. But I don't think they ever saw like a second run or like iteration. There are a couple of different models that use the Joyride technology, but it just didn't take off. Now apparently it took 10 years to develop the materials that were going to be used in this shoe, and then 3.5 years to sort of work out how they were going to put the tech into the shoe. So I reckon that's 13.5 years well spent. Seems like a good use of the time considering these have ended up in discount bins and on sort of discount online retailers. It's a cushion system that looks really good on paper, but I think when you actually put it into practice it's not great on a whole load of different levels really. When it got into the hands and onto the feet of the runners, they just didn't like it. Far too heavy a shoe. I don't think it really offered all that much cushion from other EVA sort of models really. I think around 11,000 beads would have been present inside my UK size 11, but I think it was those materials used to encapsulate the beads added that extra weight that was just unwanted. I think the original version had beads across the whole of the footbed. They did then release another version that just had beads in the heel section of the shoe and foam in the mid to forefoot. Just didn't seem to catch on though, and the Joyride has now been relegated to history. I always used to think the tiny beads are a bit of a bad thing anyway, certainly environmentally. What happens if you sort of step on a stone or you wear down the outsole? All those beads are going to go everywhere. Not great for the environment, I suppose. Is a running shoe really that great for the environment? I don't know. Some of them seem a little bit more sustainable than others. I'm sure that Nike were going to clear up all the excess pairs though. They'd come with a little dustpan and brush and sweep them up and recycle them responsibly, right? Now, doesn't the Joyride tech kind of remind you of something that we've seen recently? Those crushed up Zoom X scraps that we saw on the Zoomfly 5 and the Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. It's practically the same idea, isn't it really? You got larger pieces of that Zoom X all glued together, misshapen sort of bits this time rather than beads. What do you think, people? Same idea? Now I think about it, it's kind of another rebadged green model, isn't it, this time round? Kind of flipped it on its head. As with many of the failed shoe technologies we're looking at in today's video, the Adidas Springblade is another one that was just far too heavy for a running shoe. They released that Springblade back in 2013. It's like 10 years ago. It just looks really outdated now. I mean, just look at it. No foam, a plasticky nightmare of blades, which supposedly flex and move to allow lots of bounce and propulsion. Sadly, again, this one didn't take off, and with a 13-ounce weight, you can see why. I think some people that tested them out said they're okay for lower paced runs, but anything else sort of above that, and it was a no-go. I think they did release a lighter version a couple of years on in 2015 called the Springblade Ignite. I think it was a touch lighter. I don't think it was all that much difference between the two. The same as that Joyride Dual, really, where you had the beads in the back. This time you had the spring blades in the back and then some foam at the front. I can imagine that once those blades began to flex a little bit, that it would lose a little bit of the pop and propulsion. Surely they're going to start to give a little bit and the cushion will disappear. You get the feeling with a lot of these technologies that they're just, trying to sell some new idea. It's a bit gimmicky, really. Some things just work, Nike have kept Air going for all this time. Who would have thought? Well, I mean, Air's been around a lot longer than running shoes. These gimmicks, though, most of them never really seem to last the test of time. I've got a real cracker next for you, people. What about this? The Amplify. A shoe that was to feature a carbon plate and a strange detached lever-like technology. It was set to release in 2015 by all accounts, but only weeks before that slated arrival date, it was shelved. And it almost never saw the light of day at all. There are a few reviews out there on the internet. It's kind of funny reading them, actually, because it's kind of pre-Vaporfly stuff, where we had the Pebax foam and the plate way before Breaking 2. And these people testing out this shoe saying it's like extremely propulsive, and it probably feels like running on a brick now, I would assume. If you've actually running these, can you let me know in the comments? I'd be really keen to find out what your actual thoughts were. I think the main issue here was that a bigger brand that owned the Ampla company went bust, and the shoe designers who put years and years of effort into developing the shoe almost never got to release it. It did see a release though in 2016. They managed to get it out there. I think it was quite a limited release. I think people's attention though by then had shifted to more compressive foams. Lots of talk and rumours perhaps of these more compressive, like forgiving formulas that people were going to put into the midsole. It's a real move away actually from that point from EVA. There's still a few brands using it now, but it's pretty outdated. I think it had a 4mm drop heel to toe and about 9.7 ounces or 270 grams for a US 9. So again, a shoe that's a little bit weighty still, but at least this one's in the ballpark. Who was to know that that Vaporfly was just around the corner? It was going to really change the game with a carbon plate lever-like design. And of course that compressive foam. Was perhaps the Amplify the shoe that gave birth to all of this? Perhaps Nike saw that and kind of got an idea, maybe we can make something out of this. Sadly, there's very little activity from Ampla since this sort of shoe. There's been nothing at all. Seemed to have disappeared into thin air. I think it had a price of $180 back in 2015 for this one. That would be about $225 now, which is not far off the price of Nike's Super Shoe, is it? What coincidence. One last shoe tech for you before I go, guys. I'm a bit sad to see that this one hasn't quite worked out. I think it was quite an innovative sort of idea, and it is that of the Under Armour connected shoes. Lots of the Under Armour products come with a Bluetooth-like pod in one of the shoes that will actually connect up to the Map My Run app. It'll give you loads of data like your cadence, perhaps your stride length, pace, and all those kind of standard metrics too. All built into the shoe. You don't have to turn it on or anything, it just does it. Even better with the fact that the shoe will kind of record all of this, and you don't need to take your phone or anything else out with you. You can actually access the data once you finish running. Sadly, Under Armour though have announced that they will no longer be supporting this function. They're going to stop making shoes with this feature at the end of 2023. I think then connectivity will end for all shoes in March of 2025. So the Map My Run app's going to carry on, no worries. So if that's your favourite app to track your activities, you can still carry on using that. It's not going to end or anything. But all that extra data that you're going to be able to get from your shoes is going to end about then. I would imagine most people have probably got their fill and probably used up their Under Armour shoes by that point. I know only a handful of people, to be honest, that use a Stride foot pod these days, or this type of tech in their shoes, really. It's just a bit underused, a bit unknown, I suppose. So much good stuff you could get out of it as well. I've used mine loads and loads over the last couple of years. Most people just rely on their trusty watch to, you know, monitor their pace and speed. I know a couple of chaps around these parts that don't even have a GPS watch. They just use a standard watch and just have a look at the time. They know how far it is point to point. Kind of cool. I really like that, actually. I might have to do that at some point. Right, that's all of the weird failed shoe tech that I've got for you in today's episode. If you know of any really good ones that I could cover perhaps in a second episode, let me know in the comments below. Before we get to the musical interlude, it's time for a nice bit of hot chocolate. Today's musical interlude comes from Roddy Frame and his 2002 album called Surf. Kind of strange that there's a sort of city skyline on the actual picture of the album cover. Not entirely sure what that's all about. I think he was living in London at the time. This is a predominantly acoustic album, and it shows off some of Roddy Frame's fantastic guitar playing. He really is a virtuoso. He was when he was a young man, and when he recorded this as a slightly older chap, he's just absolutely wonderful. Probably one of the best guitar players in the UK. Hardly anybody knows who he is. It's crazy. My favourite track is number 3, Small World. This has a beautiful, very memorable sort of recurring riff, and the lyrics dance around that melody beautifully. Roddy Frame's voice sounds great as well. This does sound like it might have been recorded with the guitar and the vocals at the same time. Just a really simple setup. High Class Music is another really great track on this album. It's full of good tunes, really. Go out, seek it, and listen to it. You will not be disappointed. Roddy Frame with Surf. Thanks for tuning in, people. It is always appreciated. Help the channel out by hitting that subscribe button, dropping us a super thanks as well if you're really enjoying the content. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you